I'll be reading from James chapter 4, 7 through 10. Submit yourselves then to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Come near to God, and he will come near to you. Wash your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Grieve, mourn, and wail. Change your laughter to mourning, and your joy to gloom. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up.
Good morning, church. We are extremely excited to be here. I'm Brent Ruppel. This is my assistant, Lee Henson. And we're excited to be. I'm not excited about being demoted already this morning to assistant director or whatever. But we are extremely excited to be here.
We passed a law last week.
Oh, I didn't know we voted on that. If we could go ahead and pull up our first slide. 23 years is how long it's been since Camp Caudle first was envisioned by men like Don Todd. I don't know if you can see the cabins back there in the background and little baby Zach George there standing in the foreground, but it's hard to believe how much work went into this place at the beginning. I can't hardly wrap my mind around how much work. That next slide kind of shows all the men that were involved, and women, in getting this camp from being a completely dilapidated piece of property to being what it is today. And the amazing thing is, it's kind of hard for me to imagine that it's been nearly 2 years since we first got up here, and you as a congregation helped us fund the new barn and house that Lee and his family now live in, and that we work out of. We get so much work done. So here's the barn as it sits. I took this picture yesterday. Just an amazing blessing. It is impossible for me to express how incredible it is to have a space where all of our stuff can be, well, and also a roof to be over Lee and his children's heads. But a place for us to have all of our tools. Let's go to that next slide. I think it shows the inside of the barn. This is our shop on the inside, and we can just get so much done. Go ahead and go to the next slide. We'll kind of breeze through these fairly quickly. This is the inside of Lee's house, the kitchen. Just an amazing testament to the generosity that you guys have had for Camp Caudle. Yeah, that's the living room.
Looks clean.
Does this?
You know, the thing that amazes us even more than the progress that has been made over the years is the spiritual progress. The physical progress is the spiritual progress. And as you look at, well, as Brent talked about, all these people that have worked and worked and worked, you know, at times it feels like we've worked and worked and worked and not a lot of progress, not a lot of footing, not a lot of ground was made very quickly. But I want to read from Hebrews chapter 12. I have several verses here. 11 verses. It says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily tips us up, and let us run with endurance the race God has set before us. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion, who initiates and perfects our faith. Because of the joy awaiting him, he endured the cross, disregarding its shame. Now he is seated in the place of honor beside God's throne. Think of all the hostility he endured from sinful people. Then you won't become weary and give up. After all, you have not yet given your lives in the struggle against sin." And in this part, I recognize that I'm not trying to make a direct comparison to our labor at camp to Jesus being crucified, but I am making the comparison that at times we labor, everyone in this room, we labor and we work, doing good, trying to work hard for God, and we feel like wanting to give up because we're praying, we're asking for things, and this was the case at camp. You're asking for things, you're praying, you're working hard, you're being faithful, and though things are working, they're just not working how you would like them to, and you see this confusion. And he goes on to say here, I love verse 5, "And have you forgotten the encouraging words God spoke to you as his children?" So these are encouraging words. He said, "My children, don't make light of the Lord's discipline, and don't give up when he corrects you. For the Lord disciplines those he loves, and he punishes each one he accepts as his child. As you endure this divine discipline, remember that God is treating you as his own children. Who ever heard of a child who is never disciplined by his father? If God doesn't discipline you, as he does all of his children, it means that you are illegitimate and are not really his child at all. Since we are respected by our earthly fathers who disciplined us, shouldn't we submit even more to the discipline of our Father of our spirits and live forever? For our earthly fathers disciplined us for a few years, doing the best they knew how, but God's discipline is always good for us, so we might share in his holiness. No discipline, you can amen this if you want to, no discipline is enjoyable while it is happening. It's painful, but afterward, there will be a peaceful harvest of right living for those who are trained in this way.
So you may be wondering, and discipline, right, has a negative connotation to us. In this scripture, we're learning that discipline is, in fact, a blessing. It's a good. We can be honest. I'll be honest with you. A couple of years ago, when April and I were able to move to camp, okay, this was a big step in the life of camp as a ministry, as an organization. And so we had, instead of just one full-time employee, we all of a sudden had two. We had twice the manpower, right? And so it was real easy for us to start thinking, boy, let's think about all the stuff that we can accomplish now. Let's think about all the things that we can get done, We've got twice as much strength. We've got twice as much time now. We've got, and so it was very easy for that first year in particular to think, we can get this done. This is something that we can do. We can make camp a better place. We can bless kids here at camp. And it just wasn't really the case.
And so as that came about, as we worked harder and prayed harder, we began to feel, as I read about in the last scripture, this sense of, well, we just don't know what to do. And God began to open our eyes as to what we should do. And I want to read here, this is in 1 Peter chapter 5, starting in verse 5. And he's been talking to the elders, to the leaders here. Now he's going to switch in verse 5. In the same way, you younger men must accept the authority of the elders, and all of you serve each other in humility. For God opposes the proud, but favors the humble. So humble yourselves under the mighty power of God, and at the right time, he will lift you up in honor. Give all your worries and cares to God, for he cares about you. And so the lesson became clear to us that it wasn't our work ethic, it wasn't the amount of work that we were putting in, it was pride. It was that God was saying, at the right time, I will take care of it when all things are in place. So things have gone well for the last 24 years. It's not a complaining session. What we want to do is honor God this morning and say that in the midst of all this, we are a ministry, and God has taught us in this ministry to depend upon him. And when we have prayed and labored in that prayer for him to show us, he taught us some great lessons, some large lessons. And he says, and I love this verse, humble yourselves under the mighty power of God. And at the right time, he will lift you up in honor. And so this is an encouraging message to us, but also to all of you here, because it's God's timing when God will deliver you out of whatever's going on, and God will exalt the work that you're trying to do for him, and at that right time, he will put you in a place of honor.
I was talking with Michelle Todd this morning, and I'm sure this would be true across the board, anybody who's been involved at camp or in any ministry, really, any ministry effort. She said, we go there and we really think that we're blessing these kids, but what happens is we're blessed. We're ministered to, right? And when we just we feel that same way. Like we're supposed to be ministers of the gospel, and we are, but in a lot of ways, I personally have experienced as much growth, I feel like, as anybody out at camp. And hopefully through that, we're able to bring other people along in their faith as well. At Christ Teens this past February, some of you that were there will probably remember that we got up and we were able to speak to the group. And we had mentioned that we were in the process of of inviting several groups. So we mentioned groups from Oklahoma City, from Tulsa, from Augusta, Arkansas, from Little Rock and North Little Rock, from Newport, Arkansas, and they were all inner city ministries that were working in the inner city, okay? And what we had been doing over the past several months was just inviting these groups out to camp, not charging them anything to be there, but just trying to bless them, trying to let them kind of have a retreat, get away from the world. And it was especially kind of the kids that were leaders in their groups would come out and develop that group dynamic. And it was amazing that as God was bringing us these groups, this was really before, I think it's fair to say, this was before we had really taken our own advice here and humbling ourselves before God. This was kind of when we were still feeling pretty proud, but God was already orchestrating what was to come in the future. And that's an amazing thing, that God is faithful to us even before we decide to be faithful in the things that he demands of us. It's just an amazing thing that he can, obviously, he's orchestrating things that are going to happen in the future, and he's just waiting for the time to be right in our hearts.
And so as we, in this process of giving it up to God, and I think some of you may be confused because you think, wasn't camp always giving it to God? And what we want to convey this morning is that we feel at this point that God is in control even more than ever of the ministry at Camp Caudle. He is guiding us in ways he hadn't before and blessing us in ways that he hasn't before. And those ways, if you'll go to the next picture there, all these kids that we were able to talk about at Christ Teens, and we were blessed to have received the collection at Christ Teens that morning, and we had said that we wanted to put that towards a week, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But the things that we talked about, here's some pictures. Go to the next one there. This is an awesome picture because this girl wanted to be baptized. We're in the river swimming, and it's like, no, I want to be baptized. So it's not, well, we're in water. What hindereth me, right? And I love the kid in the background going, woo, right? All right, go to the next one there. Go to the next one. The thing about camp is that we're excited because we had over 700 kids in 7 weeks this summer. That's more kids than we've ever had before. And we recognize that that's because God and directly guiding us in the way that he would want us to go.
It's really impossible to quantify fruits, right, in a lot of ways, spiritual fruits. So, we see that we had more kids than we've ever had before, which is an amazing thing. We had between 25 and 30 baptisms this summer. That's another thing that's kind of hard to quantify because a lot of those happen late at night when we're not aware of them, or they'll go home and get baptized with their family, and it's really impossible to put a number on how many people decided to follow Jesus, in their hearts, even if they had been saved, even if they had been baptized in the past, to actually give it up to Christ, to give their lives up to Christ. That is something that happens on a daily basis at Camp Caudle. There were a few things that we feel God directly orchestrated in order to make this happen. I'm going to be honest with you. You can't, on your own, handle 700 children. You just can't do it.
I can't handle my 3.
You can't handle 3 kids. You can't handle 700 kids. You can't handle 300 volunteers, So God put some things in our laps that really enabled us as a ministry, not just us personally, but us as a ministry, as a camp, that enabled us to be able to reach these goals or accomplish these things through him. The first thing was our internship program that we really were able to develop this year. We had 7 interns this summer. Several of them are here this morning, and they attend at the Student Center. And it was incredible having those guys out there. So, guys, we had 4 girls and 3 guys.
Bad ratio, by the way.
One way or the other. We had too many of one or the other. I'm not sure which one. But the first day that they got out there, we did a training session. Okay, so we taught them a little bit about how to deal with kids, right? We taught them a little bit about how to handle the physical side of camp, so the weed eating. We actually taught them how to run a weed eater, how to run a lawnmower, all these things that we knew, taught how to drive the tractor, right? And so those were fun things. I'm going to show you a video of our first training session, if we can. You can't go too fast and turn sharp.
It's okay, Becca.
Just mow them all over, Becca. It's okay. It's all right. Yep, just run them over. Look, she can go back through them real easy. Yes. Yeah. So we know that the object of this training session was to in fact miss the cones, right? Everybody kind of understands that she's supposed to be slaloming through the cones. This is Becca. She's not here this morning, so we can make fun of her.
That's right.
All we want.
She'll be so embarrassed when she
I
finds out.
don't know who that was laughing like that. I do not sound like that. I don't think. Or nobody would hang out with me ever.
We've had interns in the past, but as Brent mentioned the word program, this was the first year we were able to have an internship program and really work to mentor these college students. The second thing that really fell into place for us, for years we've wanted, and if you volunteered out at camp, one of the biggest jobs, maybe the biggest job, is the job of running the kitchen. And for years we've hoped and prayed that we could get a kitchen manager, but we just didn't want to force it, didn't want to push it, and earlier in the year, we actually got a call from a lady, and she had volunteered in the kitchen before, and she said, I got wind that you guys were looking for some help. I would love to do that. I've been looking for somewhere to do that and volunteer my time. And we were floored. I thought she must be on crazy pills or something because it's a terrible job. And we met with her and talked with her and explained what it would be, and she said, this is exactly how I'd like to perform my ministry, so to speak. And so that was a huge, enormous blessing for us this summer to have somebody that knew how to run the kitchen, handle the part that we had this summer. We had someone in the office that we had as a part-time registrar, which was huge for us to have somebody that could handle all these applications coming in by the hundreds.
The third thing that happened that we had really nothing to do with was through reaching out to these groups of kids, particularly inner city children, but not just those kids, but the kids, and it's really just society these days. Kids are going through things that we as a staff are not qualified to help them with, if that makes sense. They're above our pay grade, so to speak. And so it was such a blessing this summer to have Amy Tyndall was able to come out several weeks this summer, and it's just one of those things that God made happen. And she was able to be there this summer for several of our weeks and serve as a counselor, as a sounding board for kids who are going through some serious stuff. And it was just such an amazing thing. She handled several of our disciplinary problems, and most of the time that was closely linked, I think she would say, to issues that they were having at home, okay? But then also things that they were just really struggling with mentally, spiritually, physically, that were no fault of their own. They're not bad kids. They were just going through bad situations. And it was something that as we went through a couple of these sessions this summer, we thought, how would this have happened without her being here? I mean, it's just such an amazing thing that we get on our knees and thank God for that she was there to help those kids.
And as we mentioned earlier, the funds that we raised at Christ Teens this year, we had mentioned during that meeting when we got on stage that we wanted to use that money directly to help kids that were abused, abandoned, neglected, different kids that were in bad situations. It's transformed in a lot of ways how that's going to take place, what's going to happen. But we recognize that God wanted to use us in that capacity. And so the picture you see up here, it may just look like any other picture to you, but this is from that week. You can see, I think, is that you, Hunter? Is that Hunter?
No, that's you.
I'm that big? Man. Not that you're big. Anyway, so is that you, Jenna? Jenna, are you in this room? I think that's Jenna in the front. And this was 3 little girls. We were able, and this was a great week, we were able to take the young kids from the Southern Christian Home this year, and many of them are here, and a lot of them are back in Children's Church. I've seen them this morning, and we had the best week. We had the best week with those kids. And what we were able to do is just take them out there, and we had a blast. We had local groups. Fred Teague donated the bump and jump things. We had the cake place donating cakes for us to have a big birthday party for. Many of you in this room donated money, and we went out and bought. I mean, this was a lot of fun. I got to go, which I hate shopping, but it is fun to spend your money to go buy toys for kids, okay? And so we went and bought presents. They got to pick things that they would like. We got to buy them presents, have a big birthday party. Some like Kristen Davis did a tea party. Different ones that painted toenails and did the girly thing with the feet. I don't know what that was involving. We got to take the boys fishing, which was really awesome. Just go down and we spent the evening on the creek fishing. And many of them had never done that before. And then we taught them how to build a fire. And then we did our devotional down there. So we wanted to come full circle to explain to you what we talked about doing at Christ Teens, we got to do. And it was awesome, and God was glorified.
It was an amazing thing to see those kids have people in their lives. Shannon and Charles May were there, and they were kind of grandpa figures, and helping kids put things together in woodworking class, and just obviously a multitude of people. We can't list everybody that helped, but it was a cool thing for those kids to have and grandpas and aunts and uncles that cared about them, and friends, and just that family atmosphere is a it's a simple thing, but it's a very powerful thing in their lives. And I think everybody that was there was touched deeply by that as well. The future, where are we going? We are excited about the fact that we can concern ourselves not only with making sure the plumbing works.
Amen.
Okay? 4 years, right, we were making sure we were up to health code. Like, that was a struggle, okay? You guys saw the picture of how we started. That's not acceptable for having a bunch of kids in cabins with the roofs falling in. So much work went into developing the physical side of camp, the infrastructure. And now we're able to kind of look to the future and look towards weeks like this, look towards reaching out to groups from inner city ministries. We're able to explore the idea of having a camp session next summer for children of incarcerated parents. These are things that we are super excited about, really pumped up about, and we're just looking towards the future. And we know that you guys are going to be involved in a very deep way in everything that we do from here forward.
And so we want you to know what we believe camp is. And I've written down 3 things here what we believe camp is. Number 1, camp is a place to find faith. And so you could be a child, a young adult from any life and come into camp as we did, as many of you sitting here did. Camp is a place to find faith, to come out there to be surrounded by people that love you, that are encouraging you, and you can feel free, is the word I like to use, the freedom to find your faith. The second thing is that camp is a place to find a mentor. This may, as it was in my case, and I think in Brent's, this may be a lifelong mentor. This may be a mentor for a week or for a summer, but camp is a place to be around people who are more mature than you in the faith, and you have the freedom again to talk to them, to open up to them, to share with them, to ask them, to learn from them. So it's a place to find your faith. Camp is a place to find a mentor. And the third thing is that camp is really, for a lot of kids that come out there and adults, a sounding board for your faith. It has a unique thing going on where you can come back year after year and you can really gauge your progress in your faith, if you've matured or not. And so what happens is you come to camp and you are in sort of a culture shock of faith, and you develop a faith, or you start mentoring or being, you're honing your faith in, and then you leave and you kind of go out into the world in a big picture. And when you come back, you're able to clearly see, you know what? I'm not where I wanted to be when I made promises to myself last year. Or you're able to bounce off those mentors, those older people, or see yourself around your peers, and you're able to see where you are in your faith. So it's a place to find faith. It's a place to develop your faith with a mentor. And we also believe that it's a sounding board for your faith.
A couple weeks ago, Neil preached, and these concepts he kind of wrapped up in one word, which was discipleship, right? That is discipleship. I would like to ask our interns that are here, I think 5 of them are here.
Some of them went back to children's church.
Okay, yeah, some of them may have helped with, I think Jenna is back there helping with children's church, but Carly and Sarah and Mason and John/Joey, you guys kind of come up here for a minute.
Come on, Sarah.
I guess just right there on the...
Yeah, stand beneath us.
Yeah. So as 2 people that work at camp, there's no way in the world that we could develop a relationship with 700 kids, right? There's no way we can even develop a deep relationship with all of our volunteers that are out there. So what we were able to do is through these guys and the ones that aren't able to be here this morning, especially Becca, rest in peace on the lawnmower.
Did you just cross yourself?
We were
You can't do that thing.
through them we were able to, we discipled them, and they were able to then in turn disciple others. We feel like that's the model that Christ himself followed, and so these guys are actually in the part of their lives where they're deciding where they're going to go, and we believe that they're going to take what they learned this past summer as interns and produce fruit throughout their lives. I would like to ask, can I borrow your microphone? I'm going to ask Mason, first of all. Is there any switch on this? Or is it on? Okay, there we go. Awesome. Mason, if you could just describe, Mason's been coming to camp for several years as a kid and then now as an intern. I would just like, just briefly kind of describe what those past few years at Camp Caudle and especially this year as an intern, what that meant to your faith.
I guess I should start. Growing up, I grew up in a non-Christian home. For those of you who were here when I gave the cardboard testimony, you know that. But Brent, my cousin, he invited me out to camp a few years ago, and he was one of the few Christian influences that I had. And so growing up, I didn't go to church. I didn't have that influence from my parents, but I always had that one week at camp. If it wasn't for that week, Livingstone's week that I went to every summer, I have no idea where I would have been. I got baptized at camp when I was 18. That was 3 years ago, I guess. And then from then on, it was just like God was using camp to help me grow. I was still going as a counselor. Hi, Jenna. And then, the last year, I was considering, the possibility of maybe going into some sort of ministry after college. I'm a senior this year, so I need to decide that soon. But camp was interning this year was really good for me because it kind of showed me what I want to do. It's still not set in stone, but I have a better idea of what I want to do with my life, and it's because of camp.
All right, we're also I'd like to ask John to share a little bit. John he's our only guy that's been an intern the past 2 summers, so he's the senior intern, right? The rest of these guys are assistants. And so, John, I'd like to just ask you what being an intern at Camp Caudle has meant for you in your walk with God over the last 2 summers.
Well, it's kind of taught me how to just obey God full-heartedly, how to walk with God in service, because I think for me, we all have our things. I do better when I serve people, and like those kids when they come in and they come in a little damaged and they leave a little bit better than they were when they first began. So for me, it's in seeing those kids change. And as Brent said earlier, like when he moved out to camp, it helped him grow a lot better, and that helps me grow out there when I'm with those kids, because they teach me a lot more than we could teach them. So.
Absolutely. Let's go to the next slide if we could. I was going to get to the final slide. Another. All right, the next one after that. So here's our group of interns, minus John, because he was on a mission trip at the beginning of the summer to the Dominican Republic. So he really skipped out on the hard work and went and did mission work. But how awesome is it that these group of young people are willing to give up a summer? And they were able to do that because of the support of several people here. They raised their own support so that they wouldn't have to be destitute when they went back to school this semester, right? They had a little bit of money in their pockets at least. And we're just so thankful to be able to work with these guys. I would like to, if we could at this time, anybody who's, you guys just stay right there where you're at, but anybody else in the room who has either, and we're just about to wrap up, but if you've either found your faith at Camp Caudle, you've developed your faith at Camp Caudle, or you've shared your faith. So basically, you've either been, you've discipled and been discipled at Camp Caudle. Could you just stand up where you're at? I'm just going to see the influence that this ministry is able to have. I mean, I give you guys a hand. We would like to mention that Camp Caudle Appreciation Sunday, in our minds, is not you showing the camp or us how much you appreciate us. It's an opportunity for us in the ministry of Camp Caudle to show much how we appreciate you as a congregation, and just how involved you've been and how supportive you've been. You know, for myself personally, it saved my soul. And so it's just a small little thing to be able to try to pay that forward to these to work with every summer. You guys can go have a seat. Thank you so much.
So the first weekend in November, we're going to have our fall festival. It's really an open house at camp, and so we want you to invite anybody that you want to invite. Come out there, show them around the camp, let them know about the ministry that's going on. Take time to ask questions yourself, see what's coming up in the future. We've got lots of great projects if you want to know about them. But more than that, we want you to know that we are thankful to be doing the work that we're doing, and we know that God is blessing us in our efforts to do so. After this, we're going to all be able to go over here to the Family Center and eat, so we hope that everybody joins us. If you have any questions about anything we talked about today, or if you want to grill the interns about how bad of bosses we were, you can do that. But we're going to stand this morning and sing, and we want to sing a traditional camp song. And if you have any needs this morning, or if you feel led to be prayed over or to give your heart to God in baptism, just come on forward while we do that.
That I wasn't gonna tell anybody, but I couldn't keep it to myself.